Hello and welcome to the AaronCanDraw Art Podcast, Episode 3, an interview with Ethan Yazel. Goal of this podcast is to keep it short and sweet, keep the listeners engaged, and hopefully learn what you want to know from your favorite artists. Today we are talking to Ethan Yazel. Ethan is a background painter for TV animation currently living in Indiana. Ethan attended the University of Ball State, a small state school in central Indiana. Ethan's professional career started as an animation assistant on an animated short called Claire and the Keys, but recently has worked on Netflix's The Get Down and The Adventures of Kid Danger on Nickelodeon. If you haven't heard of Ethan yet, well, you will soon. Ethan has been working on a short film for the last 2 years titled Agent Bird, and has had to keep a lot of what he's been doing under wraps. This is due to submitting his film to film festivals. Ethan and I know each other purely through Instagram, where I asked for some information on how to submit films to film festivals, of which Ethan was very nice to oblige. You can check Ethan out on basically every single platform you can think of: Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, at Ethan Burnsides. So that's enough chit-chat. Here's everything you could ever want to know about submitting stuff to film festivals, and just a great chat with my friend Ethan. Let's go! Hey there, everybody. Today I'm sitting down with Ethan Yazel? Is that how you say your last name?
Yep, you got it right there.
Yes! Knocked it out of the park on a complete guess. How's it going, bud?
That's going well. Keeping busy. Trying to, at least. How are you?
I'm doing pretty darn well. Woke up a little bit ago. Have some coffee right next to me, so still kind of waking up a little bit.
Yeah, it's early morning for you.
Yeah, the time difference isn't so bad, but anyway, we're gonna jump into some more serious questions right now. All right, man. So you've been working on this project called Agent Bird for a little while. Do you want to give everyone out there kind of the rundown of what you're doing?
Yeah, so Agent Bird is a short film project I started, I think, early spring 2017, and it's just a 2-minute short, so it's really not that big of a project, but it took us about a year to get completed because the people I had helping me and myself were working full time at some other jobs. So, but now it's all wrapped up, everything's finished, and we're sending it off to festivals.
Dude, that is super impressive. So, I mean, 2 minutes is still nothing to laugh at to get, full production done in a year. Like, how did scheduling go? How did the whole production, can you give a little bit more insight as to how that went?
Yeah, so it started out with, I had the animatic and the storyboard done. It was an idea I had in college. And so that was all pretty well figured out. And then I actually picked up my first animation industry job, air quotes there, with The Get Down on Netflix. I had seen a post somebody had shared on Facebook. They were looking for background designers. And I was like, I'll shoot my portfolio that way. So I had just come off of production on that, and I had learned a whole bunch of stuff, and I didn't want to slow down in between work. So I just jumped right into taking the storyboards from Agent Bird and then starting to polish off backgrounds. Everything else the story-wise was set, and so the backgrounds was a good place for me to kind of meld back into production on my own and get going with that.
That's a piece of information that I always tell younger artists, is that you just need to kind of make work for yourself in your downtime. So animation production, it requires a lot of artist power to make an animated short. How many people did you have helping you out after you had locked down your storyboards?
That was the main person I had helping was my girlfriend at Paisley Drawers, Paisley Hansen there on Instagram. And I mean, she went through, and by the end of it, she had animated half, if not a little bit more, of the entire 2 minutes. As soon as the backgrounds were done and we were ready, she helped me polish off a character design that wasn't quite there for the cat, and then she just jumped right into animation and started running. And then we had some help from Otler Mac, and then Alec Durant helped us out a bit too on the animation. So it was pretty small. And then I had a friend work on music for me, an old friend that went to music school. So it's a pretty small production.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Was it your first time actually starting to manage people, a small team or anything?
Yeah, in school I had some experience with some class projects on things, but yeah, nothing on the scale of we're all in this and this is all we have. We're all in the same boat and that's it. So it's definitely eye-opening on that. It's a lot of work that you don't think about, especially when it comes to managing things. Like animation production on its own is a whole lot of work, a lot of which I didn't really see until I started trying to manage a project.
Yeah, absolutely.
There were things that I would think about in my head, and I would have sketched out of what I needed to do, but then I also needed to figure out an easy way to convey that to people, and then kind of transcribe my brain stream out into something that we could all digest and figure out.
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason that I contacted you about doing this interview is that you and I had chatted briefly on Instagram about the life of submitting a short film or a film in general to film festivals.
Yeah.
We had talked about how this is, some of the information about this is a little hard to find, and that people hold a lot of this like pretty close to their chest. So we're going to hopefully kind of crack the Pandora's box of what it's like to submit to film festivals. So do you want to like go through like how things are going right now, or like your process of what's been going on?
Yeah. So on the festival side of things, I've got a list of about 40 or so festivals that we're planning to submit to. Some are free, some are paid, depending on the city and the kind of the place I'm going, the areas I'm going for there. We're shooting for about a 40% acceptance rate in total on things, just based on some other shorts that we've worked on, and so the way some more experienced friends have looked at it, and they're kind of forecasting a hopeful acceptance rate there. When it comes to like submitting to festivals, it's really weird because the festivals make money no matter what on the submission. So they want you to submit. So you've got to kind of balance wanting to get it in places and then wanting to keep up kind of I don't know how to describe it, like a rapport about your film. So one thing that I had learned kind of going through festivals is there'll be like in Georgia. Georgia's one of my targets. That's where we're looking at moving, some job opportunities down there. There are free festivals like in Atlanta and Savannah, but then there are also paid festivals. So if you submit to like a free festival, it's kind of faux pas to submit to a free festival in the same city as there's a paid festival. So you want to try to prioritize, because the paid festivals are usually larger and have more kind of clout with people. So there's a bunch of little faux pas and things that involved in the process that you don't really learn about until you talk to somebody who's done it before, or you do it yourself and kind of learn over the course of several submissions.
Yeah. And like, I can tell you, I mean, I've yet to ever, try to make a production that would yield me submitting to something. And like you said, you don't know until you've actually done it.
Yeah. It's a whole nother world compared to like posting something online. You post something online, it gets some likes, it gets some retweets, and then it just kind of disappears. But when it comes to something like a short film, you can put it online and you can go through that same like and share process, but then it just kind of fizzles out. But with a short film, you've put all of this time into producing the thing, and you finish and you're so excited to share it with people, but you can't just yet. You've got to hold on to it then for another year and a half cycle of keeping it kind of under wraps. It's a real slow burn when it comes to getting a little recognition for what you've done. Yeah.
Can you explain like what the actual like thought process is behind like why you have to not share it online, like while you're submitting it to film festivals? Because it's something I've never quite understood.
Yeah. So the festivals, like they make, you pay your submission for your film, and they make some money there, but then they also use the submissions that they accept to bring in ticket sales like a normal theater would for a blockbuster. So they want some kind of exclusivity with your short film and your product that they're going to be then marketing and sharing with the public. So there are some festivals that are really strict about it. They don't want any online viewings at all. And then there's some that'll be more loose, and it's like less than 100, less than 500, less than 1,000 kind of thing set up. And that's usually all in the documentation. And that's a whole nother thing, is one festival will have a rule, and then you've got to make sure that it lines up with another festival's rule, or otherwise you're just disqualified right out the bat. And you're out that submission fee, which is kind of a bummer.
Yeah, that absolutely is. So like, I guess that does make sense to not even bother trying to put it anywhere. So you might as well just make sure you're safe on all fronts across the...
Yeah, across the board. So like I had followed some of the Ooblets game development, and they talk a bit some on their Patreon about I think something to the effect of public development, where they share what they're doing and how they're doing certain things. Now they can't release the whole thing like a beta key to the public or anything, because they still got to keep it under wraps. But I kind of saw that and was reading what they were writing and tried to adapt it to what I was doing. So even though I couldn't share the whole thing, I shared quite a bit of the development of the film. So like we would do a couple weekly streams on Twitch where it'd be animating or painting or compositing or coloring and that kind of thing. And so I really structured our production to where I could still share a little bit without giving away too much. So when it came to like when we got to animation, I had pretty much Act 3 we didn't show any of, because I mean it's 2 minutes, so like the last 45 seconds or so nobody's seen except the people that have seen the whole thing. But I was able to cut up little bits and pieces of some short shots and some stills rendered out that were able to be used as publicity material without giving away the whole thing. So I was able to work in a way to drum up a little attention for the project without breaking any festival unspoken rule kind of things. So I didn't kind of screw myself up at that end of things.
Well, it sounds like you did your research and you actually knew, what things that you should or shouldn't do. You had mentioned pretty quickly that, like if you mess up on this, that you might end up, missing out on the fee that you had paid to submit. Like, can you describe just like the range or like your budget allocation that you did for submitting to film festivals? Yeah.
So originally when I had finished, I just kind of sat on the film for a couple days, just kind of relaxing and kind of letting out a large breath after production had ended. And in my head, I was bouncing around the idea of $200. I was like, okay, if I'll say I can throw $200 out the window and see what that does. And I talked to a few friends who I had helped on other short films and other projects and things. And then they're like, no, you've got to submit to more. You've got to submit this to more than $200 worth. Your average festival fee, I mean, you'll have some free ones, you'll have some $5 ones. But a lot of them are going to be between 30 and 35 for the average. There'll be some that are 75 or 80. Those are going to be like your Academy Award qualifying films. You've got overseas film festivals that are like the Melbourne International one. I think its early bird rates are like $75, $85 just for your submission. And that's like no guarantee. Like you're pushing that out. So after I'd gone through my list and kind of curated suggestions and where I wanted to send the film, the budget came out to around $800 for the year to do this. Now it's weird, like $800 right out front seems like a chunk of change. Like that's rent, that's car insurance, that's a doctor's bill or whatever. But when you think about the time that you've put into, especially animation and short films on that side of things, like you're putting in a lot of time, you're putting in a lot of other people's time. And when it comes around to festival submission, that is putting your money where your mouth is. Like you can work on production and talk about making something all you want. But until you back it with, some cash money, people aren't going to take you as seriously until you start putting like a monetary investment into it. And that shows that you're serious about it. That shows that you believe in it. It just it's a hard pill to swallow, but as you start to swallow it, it gets easier. And you start recognizing the worth behind it. You're not just throwing the money out, even if it doesn't get in, you're still getting in front of people and seeing what people think.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like that you're investing in yourself, right? Like you put in your effort and time, so why wouldn't you make sure that the maximum amount of an audience is going to see your thing?
Exactly, and like it's like one friend put it like the getting in front of the right people. Like you can put it online and cast a huge wide net, but film festivals are like just a single fishing lure out, and you're looking for a real specific fish.
No, that's a really good way to put it.
Thank you. Right now, here at the end of March, we're at about $600 invested in short films. So a lot of the festivals are going to be in the summer and fall. So their submission deadlines are towards the early spring. So we were able to hit a large number of the festivals right off the bat. And then here towards the summer, it'll be kind of slower investments over the months.
Nice. So, I mean, I was recently talking to a friend who is working on a short film project right now, too. His name is Amos Sussigan, and he's run a couple of short films before, and he's had them submitted to film festivals. And when I inquired to him about, a budget for submitting, he very politely opened my eyes as to, like, the amount of money that you have to put in. He's like, like I had to find an agent that would represent me to put forth the money to do this. He's like, it was like $10,000 or something just ridiculous. And I was like, oh no.
Yeah. Yeah. If you like the original list that I had compiled and had all of the pricing set for was going to be like close to $2,000. And I was just like, I wanted to be able to send it off, but I had to really focus in on what I could do with it. And as things go through the year, I'm going to try to pick up some more. But the $800 was like the initial investment I could put in for a first round. It's weird. It's like, I mean, when you get down to festival submissions, you get away from being an artist and being a creator, and you get to be the business side of things now. And it makes total sense why it's hard to do, because as creative people, we kind of zone in on one thing or the other.
That is correct.
But when it comes to festivals and marketing and trying to fund this thing, you've got to really cut out your passion and how much you love what you're making and turn it into how are we going to do this physically with numbers.
Yes. So one follow-up to that, I know that you had said that you were using Patreon to, kind of catalog some things and to get people engaged in your product. Is that something that you would have used as well for like raising funds for submission fees to films? Or can you just like talk a little bit about the Patreon use for your project?
Yeah, so I'm a relatively small internet artist. I don't have a huge following or anything, but I've always seen Patreon as an interesting place to put forth what I'm doing with the option of patronage through things. I thought that was a really nice pricing model, regardless of the fluctuation they've gone through here recently. It's still a nice little hub that's free to put up without worrying about any of the back end kind of things. So for me, Patreon was a place where I could host a stream of Agent Bird content, so I could have a pseudo catalog of what I've been doing, because something that you've wanted to talk about some is the press kit. Once you get into festival submissions, you need a press kit. So right off the bat, I wanted a place where I could have a stream of thoughts and images of production, where I could keep it behind a limited paywall, so I knew it wasn't super public, going back to the festivals and their limited viewership that they want. But I could also raise a little money and a little interest with it all in one spot. People use Kickstarter for the same thing, or Indiegogo. Mm-hmm. But the way I saw it, I didn't have the reach, so I started building that before I really had any audience for the project.
I think that is a super good way to like go about it. Like you just said, like you're a pretty small artist, and you talked about, when you put something out online that you're kind of casting this net, but if you're casting a pretty small net, you're only going to get a small return. So I think that you made the right choice in trying to like build your audience very slowly, very methodically, as opposed to thinking that it's just going to happen. Yeah.
I mean, you can want as much as you want for people to like and see your thing, but there's so many people out there, and I'm not grumpy about it. It's just kind of a
fact
of how things work. It's like, I really want people to see this, but I can only get in front of so many people. And recognizing that early on, I think really helped us kind of work with the scope of the project and not get our hopes and dreams in front of what could actually be done when we got down to brass tacks.
Yeah. So you just mentioned scope. When I sent you the questions yesterday, you had done a really good job of describing the scope of whatever you were going to make into like, it was going to be 2 characters and it's going to be 2 backgrounds, or like 2 areas. So I know like how much time and effort I'm going to have to make this. Can you just describe a little bit about how scope impacted what you wanted to make?
Well, I think I touched on a little bit earlier, we wanted, like Paige and I wanted something that we could work on in between work, to where we could say, we weren't getting paid, and it's not a show credit or anything, but we're still making this thing. But we wanted it to be a scale that we could pick up and put down as our day jobs required, but also at the end would yield something possible. So we had bounced around a few ideas on things, and a couple of the other ideas that we were running with it was just too much. There were a lot of unanswered questions on story. Like, story is so important when it comes to making your own short film. It's like, if you can get that nailed down, if you can hit that initial story deadline and accept that you're not going to change something, you're going to keep it tight, then, I think that's a good first step into focusing on the scope of your project. So Agent Bird it's 2 minutes. Like, it's, I don't know, however many frames that is. There are two environments, an exterior and an interior, and then the two characters. There's simple designs. The backgrounds I had set up to work on a layer structure. Nothing's on one layer painting. So if I had to go in and fix something later, it was just an easy adjust a layer, fix a mask, boom, ship it. And it's kind of like in some programming circles or in game development, they talk about Scrum as a project management thing. And I'd kind of adapted that a bit into understanding what can happen with a project and where and when and how things can get off the rails. So I'd always tried to anticipate things happening. Like, I would be driving around just after we'd started Agent Bird production. I had just had carpal tunnel surgery on my arm, and I was going back and forth to like physical therapy and things. So like, wow. Car time was thinking time. Like, I was just in the back of my head, I always had, okay, shots 35 to 40, there's going to be, the atmospheric effects there. I need to figure out, like, I'm not a compositing wizard, but I need to figure out how I can do them and do them the way I want them without trying to learn a whole new program right off the bat. I feel like I'm kind of rambling here, but a lot of it was figuring out and recognizing where problems were going to be and not ignoring them until they had to be addressed. It was like, okay, I'm painting backgrounds. I know how to paint backgrounds. I can sit here and paint backgrounds in the show style or in the film style, but be thinking in the back of my head, okay, how are we going to do the animation? How are we going to do these props? And with Bird there, we thought about trying to rig puppets in Toon Boom. We had a friend that made a test puppet for us she had worked on. But it just came back to, there were things in the storyboard that we couldn't do with the puppet. It was going to be more work trying to figure out the puppet. So we're just like, okay, scrap that. We know animation is going to take a little bit longer. We're going to have to hand draw everything. It's just going to be faster than trying to learn how to work a rig and things. So it's, I think, right off, like, starting, recognizing where problems could arise and recognizing the things you don't know and start researching those things just right off the bat. Anytime you have a break, where you're doing something that's not taking up your brain, thinking about that kind of thing.
Like, the reason I wanted to talk about that is because I think that is one of the biggest issues that people face when they want to make something that is their own, is that they're incredibly ambitious and they don't identify the problems up front. And then when they run into them, it can be enough to make them not want to work on that thing anymore. Like, when I was in school, we had, your end of the year project would be a short film or whatever you'd have to make. And kids would pitch these like 6-minute shorts, and they're supposed to finish it in 2 semesters, and it never got done. They would hardly get through pre-production, let alone animation and everything else involved with it. So I think it's a really good thing for people to be aware of when they want to start their own thing.
Yeah. That's something we talked about a lot. Pace and I both worked on our first real production was a short film called Claire and the Keys. And it was the director's like main thing. He's a professor now. And we had kind of seen that was his big chunk of what he wanted to be doing at the time. He's on to different things now, of course. But for us, Agent Bird was in a way disposable. Like, it sounds weird, like, oh, you're dedicating 2 years of your life and how much money to this thing, and you call it disposable. But it's not my magnum opus. It's not the last thing I'm going to make. It's the first thing I'm like dedicated 2 years to, and I'm putting out there. And I think I agree completely. That's something that is hard to recognize early on, because you're like, okay, I want to make this thing for me. It's going to be all mine. We're just going to run. We can make anything. But when you start looking at the physics of time and money, you've got to really focus in on what can we actually do? What are we going to get done in a timely manner that's not going to pull our hair out?
Yeah, I think that you absolutely made the right choice.
Yeah, I mean, is it incredible? No, but we still enjoyed making it and we're real happy with the result, and we're getting some good reception from things.
Yeah, I think that's something that also people need to take away, is that you should have just some level of enjoyment when doing it. It's not supposed to be that stressful. Like, yeah, it can be a little stressful, but you should still be happy about what you're making. You should still realize that you are creating something and that you are lucky enough to be creating something.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we're still sitting here making cartoons.
You got that right.
Like that's one thing I brought up when we would be streaming production and things would get stressful. Like if you told 5-year-old me that, 20 years down the road, you'd be making your own cartoon, it would just blow 5-year-old Ethan's mind.
Yes, absolutely.
So I always try to think about things like that. Positive.
I think I need to print that out, get it framed, and put it up on my wall next to me for whenever, I'm beating my head against something and be like, Aaron, you're still making cartoons. Fine. Okay. Everything's great.
Yeah.
So one other quick thing that you had that we talked about briefly is that you had used this aggregate website that submits to a bunch of things for you.
Yeah. So that's something I had no idea existed before I had started going through all this. And that's something a few friends before that brought up to me. Because like we said earlier, there's very little documentation that's easily accessible about film submissions. So in my head, I was preparing for, hundreds of different accounts and websites and trying to scour all this stuff and building spreadsheet systems to categorize everything. But there are actually a couple main festival aggregation sites where festivals put up their festival and their requirements, and you can submit to them all at once, pay once, see all the requirements for things. So the main two are Without a Box and Film Freeway. And those are, if there are others, I have not found them. But there's more festivals on there than you could ever want to submit between both of them. A lot of festivals, depending on the size, are going to be on both because they're just trying to get as many films and as much content as they can. But there'll be some that are on one or the other, depending on their partnership dealings behind the scenes. Without a Box is owned by Amazon, and they're a little bit larger. They're a partner with IMDb. So when you make your submission Without a Box, it's all free to get your project on there. But through Without a Box, you can set up an IMDb page. You can set up IMDb credits. So if you look at IMDb and search Agent Bird, everything should be in there. The last time I checked it was with who helped us on what and things. But then at the end of your festival cycle, you can start working through the documentation with Amazon to stream your film through Amazon Prime and actually receive a trickle of revenue over time. Yeah, so that's something I had no idea of that even existed, but that's a one pathway on how to kind of get a little bit back for your project down the road.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's not captured because this is a podcast type scenario, but in the camera, you could see my head tilt and my eyes widen, wait, you can get it on there? What?
Yeah. So,
man.
Yeah. It's Without a Box is kind of the elephant in the room when it comes to festival submission. A lot of the big festivals are exclusively with them. They have a lot of advertising, a lot of clout in the festival ring. Film Freeway is, from my understanding, now, you can quote me on any of this stuff, but it's just kind of my understanding of this whole system as a newcomer into it. Film Freeway is a bit of an underdog compared to Without a Box. They aren't owned by one of the largest companies in the world. They're just kind of a smaller group, and depending on who you listen to and who you talk to, they might be seen as less professional, kind of scrappy underdog kind of situation, but they still have a lot of festivals that you can submit to. And with whether or not you submit on Without a Box or Film Freeway, what's important is that you submit your project regardless. And the prices are going to be the same on either. There might be some weird instances where one has a promo code or a discount that the other doesn't for some kind of limited time. But generally the prices are going to be the same across the board. So it comes down to you picking who you want to work with on that end of things. And there have been times where I've had some money squirreled away in PayPal, so I'll use Film Freeway, or I put something on my debit card and I'll use Without a Box. So it's just kind of, it's a good way to balance if you're worried about corporate monopolies on things. There are options when it comes to that kind of thing, to submitting your cartoons, weirdly enough.
Of course.
but there are options there. The great thing about using those sites is that it's easy to schedule and it's easy to organize. So you can go in there on both sites and you can aggregate your own watch list and set up, I want to be emailed when the deadline for this festival is a week away. And then, so you can go through, on the weekend, you can go through and start watching 100, 200 festivals, and you'll start getting notifications when those are ready to go. So you don't have to try to keep track of everything on your own. There's a bit of an automated process there to make sure that you're in the loop, and it takes away so much stress. Like, I sent you a copy of my spreadsheets that I've got set up for Agent Bird, and before I had started using these sites, I was trying to keep track of these dates, and I've got a big physical calendar in my office here, and I've got things on sketchbooks and the spreadsheets trying to keep track of of when I need to have something sent off. But it's super nice to wake up in the morning and know, okay, I need to submit to these 3 festivals this week and get that spaced out.
Yeah, and it also probably prevents you from having that like detective murderer like strings across like the wall type scenario. Definitely,
yeah.
Oh man,
takes away a lot of the pressure.
Yeah, no, that's really good. So you had mentioned that, you know, you've completed the small little project, and you said that it's not your magnum opus. Like, what's next for you after this whole film submission thing has come to an end?
So we're looking at relocating out of Indiana because there's not a whole lot of work here. And so we're heading down to Atlanta this summer, hopefully in May or so. We'll see how that goes. But we're kind of hoping to dive into real production, TV animation kind of things, and kind of coast when it comes to personal projects. I'm not swearing off of making short films, but it's going to be a little bit before I try to run my own again. Paisley's got a couple stories in the works that we've been working on the story side of things. But when it comes to full-fledged independent production, we're taking a little breather.
Well, it's kind of like you've been in a relationship, right? And you need time to heal after all the work.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not as large as like network work on scale wise, but definitely when it's done, like February 2nd, the morning I had finished the final render with the sound and the music and everything, it was just like a enormous weight off your chest. It's like all of a sudden you have to stop.
Yeah.
You've got to slow down and you're no longer gunning for this goal. You've got to reset and look at the next one.
Man, that is an absolutely like breathtaking thing to hear, that like all that work that goes into it, like you finally do have that feeling and moment of like, I've done it. Like, I'm complete. This is it.
Yeah. I mean, for us, it was a whole year of nonstop working on this one thing. I mean, if like looking at my Instagram or my sketchbooks, like it was a lot of Agent Bird oriented stuff, and you spend even just a year working on one project and then it's done and you don't really know what to do with yourself. There's like a post-project depression kind of period that you just you're aimless. Like you no longer have to draw this cartoon bird. And it's just like, what do I do with myself? It's kind of a refinding of yourself as an artist after you get off production.
So I know down in Atlanta, there's Bento Box, the animation studio?
Yeah, there's Bento Box, Floyd County, Primal Screen. There's a few smaller game studio kind of things. A lot of education animation now, which is kind of weird. TV production used to be a huge majority of it in Atlanta, but now it's shifting a lot towards. There's still the TV animation production stuff, but it's shifting towards a lot more educational.
Interesting. I mean, I do remember there being like the centralized hubs of where everyone was going to go after school, and it was like, all right. Yeah. The advertising or motion graphics kids were going to go to LA or New York. And then it's like, there's Atlanta for TV, and then game kids are going to go to Seattle. And then, Yeah,
it's a weird network. And that's what's great about talking to people online is seeing where people are at and where people are going and what they do. It's always interesting to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we've been doing this for about a half an hour now. Dude, this was seriously one of the most insightful talks that like I could have ever hoped to have gotten. Like, this is the first time we've ever hung out, like other than an email or Instagram message. So I seriously cannot thank you enough for sharing all this information. And
no problem. I'm happy to answer any questions on things. I can go more in-depth and a little bit more organized through email. Sometimes I get a little scrambled in my words.
No, everything you said was super duper useful, and I think a lot of people are gonna be able to use this in whatever they're trying to do. So before we sign off, is there anything else you want to talk about, mention, things that you are doing, got going on?
I don't think so. I think I'm good. I mean, follow me on Instagram. But no, I really appreciate you bringing me on here. It's I've been watching your short film with Tyre and the progress you're making there, and I'm really excited, and being able to reach out and talk to you about things has been great. Like, the internet is wonderful. Like, you don't have to feel like you're the only person trying to struggle and make anything anymore. You can talk to people and share stuff. So
yes,
I really appreciate you.
We are all individually sitting alone in our rooms making and drawing stuff.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed. Just now we can talk to people on the internet.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Ethan, like I said, thank you again, buddy. This was great. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for stopping by, and we'll see you all next time. Hello there, artist and podcast fans. Holy cow, that was a great talk. A very special thank you to Ethan for sitting down and chatting with me. I really feel like this is going to help out a lot of aspiring young filmmakers. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate everyone out there listening. If you found this beneficial, please send this around. Tell a friend, tell your mom, tell your dog. I love doing these, and us artists just need some more stuff to listen to while we work. I can keep them going as long as I know that you guys want to listen to them. Leave a comment below with what you want to know and who you want to know it from. We all just want to learn. Thanks again, everyone. See you next time.